It's gotten bad enough that even Donald Trump finally decided to wear a mask in public. I'm glad he made the shift. But, Mr. President, it's not enough. We won't be able to turn the corner and get American people back to work safely without presidential leadership. Mr. President, open everything now isn't a strategy for success. It's barely a slogan.
I mean, Joe Biden really sounds like he's going to fall asleep at the podium at any second when he's talking. And I mean, it's just going to, he's going to accidentally smack his face down on the podium and be at nap time. Look, Democrats don't care. I get it. We're all supposed to pretend like this isn't obscene. It is obscene that this is their presidential candidate. It's obscene. I mean, Hillary, say what you will, she was sharp. You don't want to be on the wrong side of her. You definitely don't want to be somebody that is on the bad side of the Clintons. We could all make a lot of jokes about that. I won't right now. Hello? But at least she was with it. Joe Biden is a total figurehead for the party, which is why the Bernie Sanders AOC input into his agenda is so concerning, because that's going to be the agenda. We all know this. There's no other agenda. There's no moderate agenda in the Democrat Party anymore. It doesn't exist. They're just putting out the old Biden guy out there. So it seems like they're not trying to make the country go socialist. But on the reopening point, increasingly what I see here, and I told you a couple of weeks ago, I said, we'll go back and revisit where we are now, and we'll see who's right. We'll see who's telling the truth. And this is what I can tell you. It's not as bad as the media is telling you, which is, I'm sure, not surprising to any of you. It's not as horrific as you've been led to believe. And there's a lot of, meaning this most recent surge. The virus is very bad. We all know that. But I mean what we're seeing now in different hospitals. But the impetus for clicks and for politics to lie about this or to misrepresent the issue is so powerful that you can spend all day just trying to chase down the truth. And then there's already a whole new set of lies that are out there. It's very hard to fight back against just this fire hose of misinformation, of disinformation about how, now we're in a second wave. Now we're finally, the back of the medical community is being broken by this. That's not true. We have, and accepting the fatality numbers that come in, we have well under 1,000 fatalities. A couple of days ago, it was more like in the 400 or 500 range. Some days it's 700 or 800, but we are not seeing anything close to what we had at the real peak in New York, where you had 2,000 to 3,000 fatalities a day, depending on whose numbers. Remember, these numbers are also imperfect. You see these stories about completely overloaded hospitals in Houston in particular, and in some places in the Orlando area in Florida. That's also not true. No one has been denied care. I see this. People say, the emergency rooms have a wait time of up to 2 to 3 hours. Emergency rooms always have a wait time that is forever. I mean, it's amazing. Unless you have a hatchet, sticking out of the back of your head when you go in. And even then you might wait a little bit too long. Our emergency rooms are not quick-moving institutions unless they have absolutely no choice. So that's one part of this. ICUs tend to be at 80 to 90% capacity all the time because think about this, how could you have an ICU that's only 10 or 20% full and not run costs that would bankrupt the hospital? So they're always trying to have ICUs that are getting full usage and that have the necessary capacity and have a surge capacity, but you don't run ICUs at 40% or 30%. People seem to think that hospitals try to operate with nothing but empty beds everywhere, getting ready for, no, we've gone through the whole empty bed scenario in New York where we had the floating hospital come up here from the Navy, and we had the hospitals being set up in tents in Central Park, and the Javits Convention Center, thousands of beds, almost entirely empty. And think about what New York was going through. The worst of the pandemic, the worst of the deaths and the numbers. But here's what I'm confident of right now. I can't tell you it's absolutely the case, but I'm confident of. We're going to see the case number start to drop precipitously within 10 days from now. Cases are going to start to go down precipitously in the areas where you've had this surge. You have not had a huge change in the way people are living their lives. Yes, I know they've changed some indoor dining. They've made some switches here and there. But you're going to see this. You're going to see the numbers start to go down, and there's going to be this desperation to say, "See, it's because we listened to the science and there were more masks." That's just not. That's not realistic. That's not true. This virus, increasingly, when you look at the analysis of it from epidemiologists who just feel the need to try to tell the truth, may have a much lower herd immunity threshold. HIT is how this is abbreviated in medical medical documents that you'll read. May have a much lower herd immunity threshold than people realize. We've been told that herd immunity, you have to be 70 to 80% of people would have to get infected for true herd immunity. Okay, well, think about this. If the herd immunity threshold takes into account T-cell immunity for coronavirus, general coronavirus exposure, it could actually be a much lower number of infected to get to that herd immunity threshold. New York City already was at a 20% infection rate, and they did some pretty widespread serology testing. And if you add to that T-cell immunity, so that's your, the white blood cells in your system, their ability to go in and destroy the virus very quickly, very early on in the infection, you may have what is effectively herd immunity without us even really knowing it, which makes a lot of sense because in New York, I can tell you, we were on lockdown after there was this massive spread, and the disease kept getting spread all over the place. They act like, Cuomo with all this stuff, we brought down the curve. We did it. You listened to me, and now things are better. You didn't listen to me, and bad things happen. No. That just doesn't bear any resemblance to the reality that people like me were living in at the time, where we were on total lockdown, all wearing masks, and you still had cases all over the tri-state area, and a lot of fatalities. This virus, like other viruses, goes into an area, it spreads among the community until it reaches a herd immunity threshold, and then it moves on. That seems to be the only logical explanation for what is happening right now and why places that have not had about a 20% infection rate are seeing this huge spike in cases. There is no hiding from the virus. There's no avoiding the fact that there are going to be a lot of infections. The smartest policy all along would have been to protect the vulnerable and take basic mitigation measures on a personal responsibility basis so that we didn't overload hospitals, because that was a possibility, and it still is a possibility in some places. All this other stuff about you got to wear masks outside, mask, do what we say, lockdown, is just wrong. And you're hearing a lot less about Sweden right now because Sweden was a place that didn't do what it was supposed to do, which was lock down. And it's in the middle of the pack for fatality ratio in Europe, but they're back to school, eating in restaurants, back out at bars, and their fatalities are at basically zero now. And their cases have fallen off a cliff. And they've never locked down. Now, I know people like to do this thing of, but Sweden is a country where there's a smörgåsburger. It's like this special Swedish thing where everyone just does what they're told. Give me a break, okay? The Swedes didn't do what the global health community was insisting they do, and the country had a reasonable outcome under the circumstances and didn't go through the same degree of insanity that a lot of other places did. There are Italian doctors that you are not hearing from now who are saying, this has essentially burned through our population. There are enough people who might have, remember, it's antibody and T-cell immunity. Those two things combined. I just asked a top infectious disease doctor who I've known for a very long time. I said, is this thesis plausible? He said, it's entirely plausible. We need more testing to prove that it's true, but this would be an answer. What other people are telling you, we just didn't wear enough masks. We didn't listen to the science enough. There's just no evidence supporting this. The theory doesn't hold together. It doesn't make sense. We were all masked. We were all social distancing in New York, and we got obliterated by this thing. Absolutely obliterated. Largely, I mean, one of the reasons that the numbers were so high was because it got into, in part because of the decision of Governor Cuomo, which is still the worst public health decision I've ever heard of in my life, and caused many people to lose their lives, to send people with COVID-19 into the nursing homes. And then once it's in the nursing home, it spreads like a highly infectious cold, but it can kill people. That's what you're dealing with COVID-19. It's, think about when someone in your office has a cold, people, unless you have immunity to it, unless you've already been exposed to that virus, people are going to be getting colds all over the place. You know this. You've seen it. You've dealt with it yourself. This is the only way that you can explain what has happened, and that's that there were some parts of the country where they had some infection level, but they had not yet reached the threshold of a herd immunity level where finally it dies off and goes down dramatically. Why is it that there are European countries that are fully open right now? I mean, that are open, back kids in school, people eating in restaurants. You're going to tell me that, they just obeyed so much better than we did. This is the assumption you'll hear from libs in this country. They did their part to take. We haven't done our part yet. Did they do their part in Italy and in Spain when they couldn't control the disease at all? What is more likely, that there's a natural progression of this virus that in a community is going to occur and you do the best you can to manage it, or that some places are just really great at handling this because of reasons that no one can really point to, and other places no one cares. They just want to get the virus. They want to die. I'm telling you that the lower herd immunity threshold, antibody and T-cell immunity combined, means that if you have 20% of the population infected, and remember, it's also that 20% that may be the most likely because of where they work and what they do and who they're engaging with, they may be among the most likely people to get infected. But you reach that level, and there still will be people that get this, but it's not going to have that same exponential spread. It's going to keep running into blocks in the passage of the disease, and we're only measuring for serology through the serology tests for antibodies, not for T cell, essentially white blood cell immunity, right? We can find the antibody copies to the virus, but we're not looking at T cell immunity, and that's a thing that exists as well. This is all established in the science. You can check this out for yourself. So if you get to 20% antibodies and maybe another 20 or 30% T-cell immunity, which some people, that means that they've already been exposed to this virus in the past, may not have even known it, then you're at a place where the spread of this disease, it's still going to exist, it's still going to be a threat, but it's not going to completely overtake the population and overwhelm the system. With that, now let's talk about what the heck is Russia doing trying to hack into our vaccine research. Russia has been accused of trying to steal information about COVID-19 vaccines. A big news story that broke today. This is from Reuters. The Britain's National Cybersecurity Center said on Thursday that Russian-backed hackers were trying to steal COVID-19 vaccine and treatment research from institutions around the world. The UK, the US, and Canada released a coordinated statement which said the attacks were being carried out by a group called APT29, also known as Cozy Bear. Remember this? We used to talk about this on the show. Cozy Bear, not to be confused with Fozzie Bear. The NCSC said it's almost certain that 95% plus that Cozy Bear is part of the Russian intelligence services. So Russian intelligence trying to hack in to COVID-19 research. Why would that be well, it's quite obvious, right? Vaccination research and the actual vaccines that may be coming online, there is going to be an enormous incentive for countries to be able to be ahead of others on having immunity in their population from the vaccine. And just think of what that will do for growth and for economic activity. Think of because it can take months to create enough vaccine for your population. So put aside for a second which places, because they can't measure it yet, which places might be at limited or total herd immunity thresholds. There's going to be a public perception that you need this vaccination in mass dosage to return to normal life. If your country is 3 months, 6 months, 10 months ahead of another country when it comes to, because, you're going to see nationalism kick up here a lot, that's for sure. Any American company that's making vaccines, we're going to want them here first. This is true. It's true all over the world. And as much as we'd like to think that they can just manufacture billions of doses of the vaccine and get them to everyone, it's going to be an enormous logistical challenge. This stuff takes time. This stuff isn't going to be, I know there's Operation Warp Speed, but it's not going to be that simple. So getting the vaccine, and I also think the Russians will be like, we don't have to test this on the million people. It says it works in the data, we use it. There you go. You're not going to sit around and pretend like, I have to do a controlled study, trial, vaccine, boom, in the arm. Now you're good. That's the plan. They're going to be like, we're going to start making vaccine now. As soon as they get it, they'll start making it and get ready to go. So now for Russia, you might think, okay, well, but we're so far ahead of Russia, and we'll probably be selling them vaccine very soon or sending it to them or whatever. What about China? All along, China has been leveraging this crisis for its own purposes, trying to use this as a means of getting further along than other countries faster, because there is huge economic advantage. Think about what a country can do with its economy turned on and functioning at full blast with 6 months lead time on another economy. All that production, all that market share, all that wealth creation, right? When you start to look at this in the balance of powers around the world, and you see what the Chinese government has done, they're certainly going to want to get their population vaccinated and back to work and manufacturing and doing all those things before other countries do. There's going to be a race to see who can get this done the fastest, because then that country will have a tremendous economic advantage. And who knows? Who knows how long it will last and what that will lead to. But there are strategic national security and just great power implications of getting the vaccine first and fastest. I can't believe we're being evicted from our home that we didn't sell. That's what Deborah said when she learned that she was the victim of home title fraud, a crime that can cost you your home. Title fraud is not covered by insurance or identity theft services. The only folks I trust to protect your home are at Home Title Lock. Your home's legal title is online, where cyber thieves can find it and forge your signature stating you sold your home to them. In Deborah's case, she didn't know she was a victim until the eviction notice arrived. Home Title Lock puts a virtual barrier around your home's title. If there's any tampering detected, they will instantly mobilize to stop it. So go to HomeTitleLock.com and register your address to see if you're a victim and don't know it. Use code BUCK for 30 free days of protection. That's code BUCK at HomeTitleLock.com. Since we're talking about hacking, we've also got to spend a couple minutes here addressing a pretty crazy moment in time yesterday when some of the biggest Twitter accounts in the world with tens of millions of followers were part of a massive hack scheme. I'm just trying to think of something. Oh, here we go. Here are the names. You had the Twitter accounts of Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and Joe Biden, all hacked and putting out this request for Bitcoin. I mean, it was a very obvious, it was, hey, hello, this is Joe Biden, and I want to give back. Please add some Bitcoin into my Bitcoin wallet below, and I will give you even more Bitcoin in return. I mean, this is not a sophisticated ploy in that sense. I mean, to hack into this stuff seems pretty sophisticated. But sure enough, they estimate that $100,000 was fraudulently acquired through this mechanism. So, because I remember seeing this, I was like, oh, come on, Joe Biden's Twitter account has really been hacked. Oh, yes. And Bezos and Bill Gates and Elon Musk, these huge names. This is a reminder. I mean, the president does communications on Twitter that even have legal implications. If the president says someone's pardoned on Twitter, is that person pardoned, for example? It's all official archive. It's all part of the official archive now, and people look at this and it can direct the whole news cycle. Cybersecurity on things like this have enormous implications. It could have. Think about this. What would have happened if someone had hacked into Elon Musk's Twitter account, let's just say, which we know they had access to it. They did hack into it. And instead of saying, give me 100,000, give me Bitcoin, which was, as I said, not a particularly clever approach, but it worked to some degree. Give me Bitcoin. I'm Elon Musk. What if Elon Musk, someone had hacked his Twitter account and he had said, I can't take it anymore. My whole company is built on a fraud. We've been cooking the books for 6 months. I'm sorry. I'm going to go off into the woods now. What if someone had hacked into his account and tweeted that out? The stock price would look like it had fallen off a cliff. I mean, the amount of wealth that would change hands. I mean, billions of dollars. I mean, that's you would see nothing like that. And how do you stop that? And what do you tell people that sold their stock in a panic and maybe, either took a loss on it or no longer own it and now can't, that's just one example. That's an obvious example. What if someone had hacked into President Trump's Twitter account and had said, we are, I regret to inform the American people, we're under attack, or, a big terrorist attack. I'm using this platform to let you know a big terrorist attack is going to hit New York City in a matter of hours. Everyone, please evacuate. Some people would look at this and say, I mean, and the administration would put another statement, but there would be people running for the exits. And I mean, a lot of them. So these companies, these social media platforms that we usually think of, this stuff really started out for people Facebook really started out so guys could see what pretty girls were in their class in college. That's just the truth. I started out at Amherst, and there was something called the Facebook that they gave us. It was an actual book of face photos of all of your classmates. And that's how the idea came to Mark Zuckerberg for Facebook. So I remember I had that, and my school was one of the earlier ones to have this online thing called the Facebook. I remember it was the Facebook at the time. And this is what brought about this social media revolution. But we usually think of social media as, cat videos. I posted a photo of Tallulah today. See, if you follow me on Instagram at Buck Sexton, you'll see these things. But if you don't, you're missing out on some good Tallulah content. And so, I see all this stuff that people are posting, and you usually think of it as, okay, communication. For journalists, it's a way for them to virtue signal to each other and bicker with each other and do the pylons about who's not woke enough. But it also is a mass communication device. I mean, Twitter for the president is kind of like a PA system from the president in the Oval Office to the whole world. And it's instantaneous, and there's no filter. So I just think it was a reminder for many of us how powerful these different digital social media platforms have become. I mean, they can change world events. And then when you start to also think about how there are admins in Twitter, and Twitter confirmed this, that the way that this social engineering hack worked, they didn't go after the accounts directly. They got access to people who work for Twitter. They target people who work for Twitter who had access to these accounts. So you got to remember that there are human beings who work at Twitter who have full access, the total and complete ability to go into the Twitter accounts of the most powerful people in the world and write whatever they want and see whatever they want. Do we ever really think about that? There are people who can see, whatever. Yeah, sure. Maybe it would be a little too obvious to go looking at Donald Trump's DMs. I bet that's interesting. Whoa. But I bet if you were to think about this, Twitter has the ability. I mean, they've effectively created the largest self-induced surveillance operation in history. Same thing with Facebook. All your stuff you're putting there, all the stuff. Yeah, they're monetizing your data. There's that privacy violation. But ultimately, there are also people in the back end of these websites who can see everything you do, who know every click you've made, every message you've sent. And when you're talking about, corporate or political leadership, there are some real implications for all this, my friends. So they apparently got control back. I think all the blue checks for a while. I wasn't on Twitter when this happened, but all the blue checks got kicked off for a bit, or that they shut down blue check Twitter, which means when you're verified, fancy, verified Twitter. I got a blue check, NBD. But now it's all back. Got to watch this stuff. Our whole world, especially as we're getting used to being on lockdown and all this stuff, you see, the world is just zeros, and the world is controlled by zeros and ones now.
I don't have any intention of butting any heads. If we butt any heads, it's going to be over the safety of our children. My whole purpose in politics are the three most important issues facing the Congress: our children, our children, our children. And that's where I butt heads. That's the hill I fight on.
I just care about the children. The children.
It's like a record that has skipped.
The children.
How many times have I told you that this is Nancy Pelosi's favorite ploy? This is her favorite thing.
I just care about it's about the children.
Yeah. Anytime any politician says it's for your safety or it's for the children, ask more questions. That's a rule. Ask more questions. What? Really? For the children? How is shutting down schools, Nancy, you epic fraud? How is shutting down schools for the children when children are at almost zero risk of dying from or even getting severely ill, right? With adults, we look at deaths and mortalities, and that's the single most important metric, but there's also hospitalizations. When I say children are at almost zero risk from COVID, I don't mean they're at zero risk just at zero risk of dying, or almost zero. Substantially lower than the flu, which we consider to be an acceptable risk for children to be in school and have for the last 100 years, okay? So it's effectively zero risk of dying. And then you add to that, they're at also effectively zero risk of hospitalization or serious illness. So what is the problem for kids? Aren't schools essential businesses, so to speak? We can tell people who work in grocery stores and truckers, God bless you, across the country, you got to do your job. But teachers don't have to do their job? Why is that? If a teacher is in a high-risk category because of age or health concern, that teacher there should be special accommodations made for that teacher to teach from home and, wait until they're comfortable or there's a vaccine or whatever the case may be. If you're a teacher and you're under 40, which a vast majority of K through 12 teachers are, guess what? Go teach. You're going to be fine. You're going to be just as fine as you would be going into school year in and year out, where kids can get other diseases. Kids can be vectors. Kids can be vectors, for example, of influenza. So they're at almost no risk of spreading it, almost no risk of hospitalization, and almost no risk of dying. But we have to keep being told by complete nincompoops like Pelosi that
It's about the children.
It is not about the children. It's about everything but the children, unfortunately. It's very, very frustrating. What's Lindsey Graham doing these days? Is he out there telling us all about how he's going to get accountability, or he's going to get to the bottom of it, Has he been on Fox News in 5 minutes? Because if not, that's the longest he hasn't been on Fox in a long time. What exactly is Lindsey Graham doing? Oh, he doesn't like when anyone is criticizing the Fauci, that's for sure. Play clip 18.
Well, here's what I would say about Dr. Fauci. He's been around a long time. He's one of the smartest people I know. Has he been right all the time? No. We don't have a Dr. Fauci problem. We need to be focusing on doing things that get us to where we need to go. So I have all the respect in the world for Dr. Fauci. I think any effort to undermine him is not going to be productive, quite frankly.
Is it undermining to point out that the Fauci is out there and he's making all these prognostications? Do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. I'm here. I'm a doctor. You got to listen to me. It's all about the social distance. 6 feet, 5 feet, 3 feet, 1 foot. Who knows? Well, let's say 6. 6 a nice round number. You get 6 eggs, half a dozen. You get 6 cookies. That's a lot of cookies, but they're good. I like cookies. So, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you, do what I say, or you're probably going to die. Is that too much to ask? Do what I say, or you and your grandparents are going to die. That's the Fauci way. We're not allowed to ask questions. Not allowed to say, why are we still listening to this guy about this? Why haven't I heard him talk about herd immunity? Why haven't I heard him address this theory that I'm seeing proposed by doctors, including Dr. Ioannidis at Stanford University Medical School, who is one of the most revered epidemiologists in the world, who's always talking about not just he was a big early voice on the fatality rate issue, but also on how we can deal with this and how shutdowns are counterproductive and crazy. It's crazy. You're not stopping the virus. The virus spreads, and once it spreads, then you shut down, and then you're just dealing with the virus that's already in the community. It's too late. On the Princess cruise ship, which you would think would have been it's effectively a floating petri dish. I know it's a horrible thing to think about, but it's true. I kept looking at the fatality rate, and Dr. Ioannidis at Stanford did that. He looked at the fatality rate on the cruise ship and figured out that it's considerably lower than what we were. Remember, at one point we were being told it's like 3 or 4%, which is Spanish flu epidemic, 1918, millions dead. That's what we were being told. 2 million people in America were going to die from this. That's what they were telling us. But Ioannidis, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing his name right. It sounds like I'm talking about the football guy, but it's Ioannidis. He also looked at the Princess Cruise data. There were, I think the if memory serves, the infection rate was only about 20%. So what's more likely, that 1 in 5 people just happen to be, without knowing that they were even being exposed to the virus, mitigating, wearing a mask, hand wash? No, they weren't doing any of those things. So why didn't they get sick? That's where you get into built-in T-cell immunity and the body's natural response to pathogens and viruses, where some people may just be more susceptible to this than others. And that there may already be a much broader immunity out there that people have. And maybe it's not a total immunity, but it's the body's ability to come into contact with this and not have a real infection manifest itself because of their immune capabilities. We know that comorbidities make it much worse. So if your immune system is weak, we know you're in really bad shape if you get this. But if your immune system is strong, and particularly if it has already come into contact with enough coronaviruses before, again, why would only 20%, I think it was even 17% of the Princess Cruise ship overall, have been positive with COVID-19? It's a question that we should think through these things and get answers, and not just say, wear a face diaper or else. We're all being told, wear a face diaper. Outside too. Look, you want to wear it inside, I get it. I don't think to wear this outside all the time in the middle of the summer is insane. Trump, it was interesting. He backed away, which I guess he had to do, but he backed away from the op-ed I talked to you about yesterday, where Peter Navarro was talking about the Fauci. Play 11.
Look, they're all on the same team. We're all in the same team, including Dr. Fauci. I have a very good relationship with Dr. Fauci, and We're all in the same team. We want to get rid of this mess that China sent us. So everybody's working on the same line, and we're doing very well. We're doing well in a lot of ways, and our country's coming back very strong. When you look at those job numbers, we've never had job numbers like we have right now. So it's coming back very strong. Okay? Well, he made a statement representing himself. He shouldn't be doing that. No, I have a very good relationship with Anthony.
Anthony, hey, Trump and Anthony are buddies. Look, they're both New York guys, so they got that going for them, which is nice. But I just think that people need to be willing to ask their own questions at this point, because the public health experts just keep saying the same thing, and it doesn't work. It hasn't worked. Wear a mask, mitigate, stay home, ruin the economy, get Biden elected. I mean, that's really what we're being told all the time. I'm done with it. I've had enough. I spent months wearing a mask all the time here in New York while people were getting sick everywhere, all over the place. And now they're just saying, oh, I'm hearing this, the CDC director saying wear a mask for 2 months and we'll be past this. I promise you, if we had 100% mask compliance, you would not be able to statistically show how it worked. You will not be able to prove that masks are the reason that this thing has gone away. That's my assessment, I should say.